Coming up on today's Daily Download, a bit of this.
What's she doing answering the door?
And some of this.
Hello? Oh, it's the vicar, and there are my pants around my ankles. Who's that in the wardrobe?
This is a download from the BBC. To find out more, including our terms of use, go to bbc.co.uk/Radio 2.
Hello and welcome to our Confessions podcast for Friday the 9th of March 2012. This week we hear from a rogue scout, a crafty competition winner who fooled our very own Tony Blackburn, no less, a free bar philanderer and a deceitful doorbell debacle. Enjoy. Tonight's confession comes from Dave in Orpington. Thank you, Dave. I don't know why he gets a geographic location when normally we take them out, but maybe
That's true, yeah.
Anyway,
All kinds of trouble.
It's on the A21, you know.
Thanks very much. Dear Father Simon and the collective, I live with the burden of this shameful activity involving one of your most esteemed colleagues for 20 years this coming May, and I feel that I can carry the weight no longer, hence this confession. It's 1992, a bank holiday no less, but as I'm sure each of you in the collective will have experienced, the concept of a lazy long lie-in is not easily grasped by young children, and so it was that I was up and about bright and early, looking after our 4-year-old son and 2-year-old daughter. Anyway, at about 7:15, having already been up for about an hour, I decided it was time for a cup of tea. The children were safely tied up, not literally, unlike the parenting behaviour recently demonstrated by some of your listeners, watching another exciting episode of Thomas the Tank Engine as I slipped out into the kitchen. While the kettle was boiling, I switched on the radio to hear the instantly recognisable tones of the legendary Mr. Tony Blackburn on a golden radio station. Your best impression, please. Well, as you know, I don't really do impressions, but it's 16 minutes... What?
No, I want you to do it.
OK, everybody, it's 16 minutes past 7.
It's South African.
All right. OK, I'll try again.
It's 16 minutes past 7. And after the next record, we'll be opening up the lines for an exciting new competition. Now, throughout the coming week, there'll be 2 opportunities per day in my show to win 4 tickets to go horse racing at Kempton Park, to be wined and dined by us at your favourite radio station.
There, what do you think?
That was amazing. That was really
and I look like him as well when I'm
extraordinary,
doing it.
actually. There is a resemblance in many ways.
Anyway, this, says David Orbiton, sounded a very attractive proposition, especially given the fact that my brother and his wife are keen racegoers. The prospect of the 4 of us being entertained in such a royal manner was very appealing. So I reached for the phone and dialed the number. Lo and behold, the radio station answered, asked me my name and told me that after the ads, because apparently there are ads on some radio station, I'd be put through to the great man himself. My heart was pounding as I heard the adverts live down the phone, and then on came Tony in his usual cheery voice and said...
And on the line, we have Dave from Orpington. Hi, Dave, how are you?
I nervously exchanged pleasantries with the broadcasting behemoth, and then we came on to the question itself, a spot the intro kind of thing, which I answered correctly. 4 tickets were mine. Later that morning, I rang my brother with the good news and everything was set. Now, it just so happened that I'd booked the next 2 days off work, so it wasn't until the Thursday that I was back in the office. I'd pretty much forgotten about my exploits until a colleague of mine, let's call him Peter, came up to me and told me how he'd heard me on the radio and had won 4 tickets to go to the racing at Kempton Park in June, and how very much he and his wife were looking forward to coming along as my guests, because, of course, we were very close colleagues, weren't we? Kempton was only a few miles up the road from where they lived, and yes, they were both available. What time shall we meet up? Of course, I was a bit taken aback, but I had no choice but to break it to him gently that, in fact, I'd already invited my brother. It would have been nice to invite Peter and his wife, but unfortunately, there were only 4 tickets. Very sorry. Well, to say Peter took it badly is an understatement. He looked like he'd explode. Oh, fine, I see. That's how it is it? I thought we were mates. Clearly I was wrong. And so on. That's all I heard for the next few minutes, and indeed for the rest of the day. He just would not stop. On and on he moaned. So when the time came for me to leave the office in the evening, the only thing I could think of as a sort of peace offering, although why I felt obliged to do so I'm not sure, was to offer to phone up again the following morning, the last day of the competition, and win 4 more tickets. Even this didn't seem to appease Peter, but I thought that this was an extremely fair if highly unlikely offer. And so it was that on the Friday morning, again round about 7:15, I was poised by the phone for Tony Blackburn to announce once again that the lines for the competition were open. As soon as he did, my fingers were a whir in my efforts to get through first. I finished dialing, a couple of seconds of silence, and then yes, the line was ringing. A few seconds later, the same friendly man from the radio station, maybe they only had one person working there, came on and he asked me my name. I was ready for this one. Peter from Esher, I replied, probably rather curtly, as I was worried that he might recognise my voice from 4 days earlier. How paranoid is that? OK, said the nice producer. Hang on the line, Peter. When the ads finish, you'll be through to Tony. Good luck. Well, Father Simon, my heart was beating 19 to the dozen. Bad enough that I was about to be live on air again, but what if Tony's voice recognition sensitivities were more honed than the really nice producer who'd answered the phone? Supposing he recognises me and I'm exposed on air? My previous 4 tickets would surely be forfeited. Could I be thrown into prison? My mind was racing. Eventually the ads finished, and I heard...
Also on the line we have Peter from Esher. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Well, fine, thanks, Tony. I managed to garble, keeping it nice and short.
What do you do for a living, Peter?
Well, suddenly I remembered that he'd asked me this question 4 days earlier. If I was to repeat that I work for a large electrical company in London, the game would surely be up. I may never see my kids again, but what else could I say? I found myself blurting out the first thing that came into my head. I'm a painter and decorator, Tony. I still have nightmares about his response.
Well, that's just great. I need some painting and decorating done in my house at the moment. I'm not far away from Esher. Maybe you could come round and do it for me.
Well, I let out a nervous laugh, hoping against hope that he'd see that as a clue to get on with the quiz. And I think that's what happened. I can't be too sure. I just wanted to win and get off the line. Eventually he played the intro. I got it right again and won the 4 tickets. I hung up as soon as I possibly could. I suspect this radio station only had one listener. I seek forgiveness for all the other listeners who are prevented from having the chance to win 4 tickets at the races by my outrageous and deceptive behaviour. I also seek forgiveness for potentially leaving my kids exposed to the possibility of having their father disgraced. Most of all, though, for misleading Tony Blackburn, radio royalty, the king of the jungle in such a dreadful manner. I hope that he isn't still waiting to get his painting and decorating done these 20 years later. Your forgiveness would surely see me freed completely from the guilt forever. Dave in Orpington with a radio sin that we haven't had before, but it's sort of misleading an entire local radio
We can't encourage
station.
this kind of behaviour at all, can we?
No.
To pretend that you're somebody else. Absolutely outrageous.
Yes.
We have to say, first of all, I think,
Even if we
though,
don't think...
having said that, I do think that Dave's friend, Peter, put a lot of pressure on Dave, and actually just outrageous, saying...
He was a bit of a git, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, really,
If we had to say
saying...
that. Can we say that?
I think we've
said it
already
now.
done it now, so...
It's been lovely working with you,
Yes,
Simon.
anyway. Finally
Yeah.
Tony Blackburn's doing drive tomorrow. Anyway, there
I
we
think
go.
that Peter should have been more understanding, and I think he put pressure, undue pressure, on Dave to commit this deception. So I'm not blaming Dave, actually.
No.
And even though he was one who actually did it, he's also already suffered by having the humiliation of having to hang up on Tony Blackburn. So I think, given all that, Dave, you're forgiven.
Mother Superior, how do you look on this radio sin?
Well, I think, being a massive Tony Blackburn fan, and by the way, those impressions, weren't they superb?
They were.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Like he was in the room.
Yeah, it was like he
Almost.
was really
Like
here.
it was like he recorded them before Pick of the Pops.
Possible? What, really? Oh, never. So I have sympathy with. I don't know why Tony Blackburn always makes me laugh. Whenever I hear him, it always makes me laugh. He's the funniest guy in the world. Anyway, back to the confession. I think that you're a bit wimpy, really, to have to kind of succumb to this guy's demands, and I don't think you should have given in to him. So I think for wimpiness alone, you're not forgiven from me.
Interesting point, Brother Matt.
Who else is listening to this radio station?
one.
Clearly no one at all. No
It's
one's
Orpington
entering.
FM.
No one's entering the competitions. And this producer is basically the first person that rings in. Yeah, you're on, you'll do. Bang. Clearly, the show is interrupting his fag break. That's all that's happening there. And frankly, the amount of production involved in this confession defies belief as well. We're going to be ending with a musical number tomorrow, are we? A bit of a dance set in the middle.
That's an interesting
Why
thought.
not? I'm going to forgive, because clearly this radio station had no listeners.
Anyway, what do you think, Brother Tony?
Well, you are forgiven. I'm forgiving you because, to be honest with you, it's such a long time ago, I don't think we should hold grudges, and we've all just got to move on.
So I think that's a nice touch, don't you think? And I think if there are any other confessions that involve Tony Blackburn,
there must be hundreds of those.
I think there probably are.
But also, he never said if he ever got his house decorated. I really want to know that.
So let's do house decoration confessions, Tony Blackburn confessions, commercial radio confessions.
Yes,
come on,
people not
commercial radio.
listening
I know most people in commercial radio are listening to us now. Confessions at bbc.co.uk, or you can confess online, bbc.co.uk/radio2. Look for our pages. Are we all ready for another drive time confession?
Yes.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
it depends on the subject, really.
Well,
is it sport?
I'm going to continue. This from Mr. G. Thank you, Mr. G. Dear Simon, Mother Superior, gathered holy people of the Radio 2 Church, please forgive me, for I have sinned. Back in the early 1970s, I was a member of the Scouts, a resourceful bunch of kids who do the right thing, try their best, and help old ladies across the road. One day in the early summer of 1972, our scout leader told us that we had been invited to a local school fete, where we would give a demonstration of scouting in action by camping overnight in the school grounds. Places were limited, and only the most badged and smartest scouts would be allowed. Though I hadn't been a scout for very long, I had a long history with the Cubs, and indeed was a former Sixer. So although I was only 11, I got a place. Eagerly, I packed my knapsack for the weekend, book of wood whittling, the complete campfire songbook. Everything was ready. I don't think there probably was a book of wood whittling.
I'll bet there was.
Do you think there was?
Yeah,
Maybe a
absolutely.
leaflet.
A leaflet of whittling with all the details that you need. Arriving at the school, says Mr. G, we set about erecting our camp in the fields and assessing the amenities. Ablutions were to be carried out in the school, and they had left the door to the gym open for access. Scouting is a naturally inquisitive hobby, so it wasn't long before I was in there having a look round. Standing around inside the gym were the stalls for tomorrow's fete, already set up and just ready to be wheeled out into the sunshine. There was a Punch and Judy, various shabby tabletop book sales. Teletop even. The usual paraphernalia associated with the school fete. I was just about to leave when my eyes fell upon a large square board laying on a table. Painted blue, it had hundreds of straws sticking vertically out of it, looking like a multicoloured porcupine, or that 70s party staple, the cheese and pineapple hedgehog. Lying beside the board was a sign with the headline, "Draw a straw," and underneath the instructions, "Pay 10p a go, draw a straw. If the top of the straw is painted silver, win 50p. However, if you find the gold straw, you hit the jackpot. You win £1." I stared at the words before me. Win £1. Simon, Mother Superior et al., let me tell you this. You could buy a house for £1 in 1972 and still have change left over for the annual subscription to the World of Scouting magazine. A wave of opportunist excitement came over me. Drawing on 3 years of trained scouting resourcefulness, I looked over my shoulder and, realising I was alone, I began to pull the straws quickly and inspected their tips. A silver straw, a couple of ordinary boring straws, another silver straw, many, many more boring straws, and eventually, my heart pounding, I found the gold straw, beads of sweat on my brow, hands shaking. I put the silver and gold straws back into the corners of the board where I'd remember. I adjusted my woggle and returned to my tent, where I tossed and turned in my sleeping bag all night, too excited to sleep, you see. The following day, Mr. G, thank you very much, Mr. G, nicely written. The following day, dressed in our full uniform, we demonstrated scouting to the assembled throng. Many knots were tied, much wood was whittled, and badges earned. But all the time I was thinking about the straws.
How did you get that far?
Pull yourself together.
I missed that
Mr.
bit
Mayo.
when I was rehearsing. Rushing to the Rushing to the stall, I found things in full swing, but the straws, my straws, were still in place. Drawing out my pocket money, I said loudly, "I'll have a go." Handing over 30p, I drew my first straw. Silver! At the first go, a gasp rang out from the gathered crowd. My second straw. Silver again! Somebody whispered, "The lucky so..." And another. Well, it was time for my third. Would it draw suspicion on me if I got 3 out of 3? Should I pick a plain straw? Did I want £1? Yes, I did. This time, gold, and this drew a ripple of applause. The lucky scout has won again. The stall owner had a faraway look, really, of someone who'd been completely fleeced, but can't really work out why. That night I danced around the campfire and quaffed many ginger beers. £2 secure in my pocket. I was rich beyond my wildest dreams. So I have to ask forgiveness, for I learnt many things from that incident. I squandered the money on Airfix kits and pop. I feel bad for the other fate-goers who thought they had a 100 to 1 chance of winning. I feel bad for the stall owner who lost his main prize early doors. However, to be fair, I also left 2 silver straws in there to give someone else a chance, not to make it look too obvious. Thanks in advance, Mr. G, aged 51 and a bit. Thank you, Mr. G. I think we got away with that. Right, let's see what Sister Rebecca makes of a tale of debauchery at the school fete.
I can't really believe that nobody cottoned on to that. I mean, 3 out of 3. Too good to be true, surely. Also,
but he's a scout, you know, you trust the scout.
Well, you trust the scout, exactly, and cheating is not in the scout's code of honour, I don't think.
I don't think so, no.
And he deprived somebody else of 3 prizes. So I think, for all those reasons,
Yes.
I can't forgive you, Mr. G.
I think he's let his entire team and the scouting movement down.
Were you ever a Boy Scout?
I was.
Did you adjust your woggle at any point?
I almost certainly did.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You see, I couldn't really get past that, and I didn't really listen to the rest of it, to be honest.
Well, at least you listened to half of it, which is which is an improvement on most.
I think that's the best line we've ever had in a confession. Pause to adjust his woggle. I
think Mr. G might have been a Janet and John scriptwriter in the
maybe. But I kind of agree with Rebecca, because it really is stealing, isn't it? You know, it's stealing. I know what Matt's going to say, though. He's going to say, good on ya. But I think I'm going to go with Rebecca and say, you're a Boy Scout, you should not be cheating.
It's not looking good for you, Mr. G. Here's Brother Matt.
Well, frankly, if you're going to have one of these hedgehog games and you're going to leave it unattended overnight, what did you expect? It's all brought on your own shoulders for If I was going to have a treasure hunt prize, I wouldn't leave the treasure hunt around so that people could have a look at it.
So it was their fault, really?
Yes, absolutely. It was his own fault. The faraway look in his eye was thinking, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have left it in the gym overnight. More fool me. Nothing to forgive. We'd have all done the same, by the way.
No, we wouldn't.
Yes, we would. All of us sat here would have done the same.
Matt, were you a
Definitely.
Boy Scout ever?
Yes,
I
was.
And would you have done it even with your scouting promises intact?
I would have done it twice.
Tonight's tale is from Al. Thank you very much indeed. Tonight's drive time confession. Here it comes. Dear Father Simon and the pardoning panel, this confession goes back some years to when I was a member of an operatic society. Not only was it an excuse for a good sing every week, but the social life was pretty good, as there was always someone having a party. One of these events, organised for a summer Saturday evening, was fancy dress, and the theme was pub names. You had to find a costume that illustrated your favourite pub. Well, as mine was called the Stag and Hounds, this presented a little bit of a problem. So on the night, I just turned up in normal clothing. Everybody criticised me for not making an effort, but soon changed their tune when they realised that if you pressed me, a doorbell would ring, okay? So, there was a local pub called The Bell, and to achieve this, I'd wired a battery-operated doorbell under my shirt, the button attached to my belt buckle, and the ringing unit hanging off my belt around the back, like this. This provided quite a lot of mirth, especially as I convinced 2 of the society's dancers that I could make a bell ring by pressing my nose, while actually pressing the button with the thumb of my other hand, holding a pint glass at waist level. Thank you for the explanation. The fun, however, took a slightly sinister turn. One of the committee members, a real hyacinth bucket type, had a habit of taking over any event and just organising it. This was not her party. She was just a guest, but she had taken things over as usual and was bossing the other guests around mercilessly to make sure that everything ran her way. This included answering the door to any new guests and making sure that they knew exactly who was in charge. As the night went on, I realised that the doorbell I'd wired up under my shirt was the same as the doorbell of the house whose party I was at. They both sounded like that. For the rest of the night, I lurked near or in the house, ringing my secret doorbell at the most inappropriate times, such as when she was pouring punch for people, sorting out hot snacks, that kind of thing. Every time she ran to the front door to let new guests in, just to find there was no one there. A small group of guests who were in on the joke thought this was hilarious, as did I. Our hyacinth bucket What?
I think it's really funny.
Was totally baffled by what was going on. She asked the owners of the house if they'd ever had any problems with children ringing the doorbell and running away. And as the night progressed, she became more and more enraged by the constant ringing. Oh, there it is again. When some latecomers did arrive, they got so thoroughly shouted at that one of the women burst into tears and refused to come in. This turned out to be the lady who had just been given the role of the Countess in our production of Marriage of Figaro. She was on loan from a neighbouring operatic society, but after this, she took against us for some reason, and we never saw her again. It wasn't until she called the police that I stopped. They refused to come, of course, doorbell abuse not being the number one issue in these parts. She eventually calmed down, but it totally spoiled her evening. It's hard to organise everyone when you keep getting interrupted by invisible bell ringers. So I would like to beg your forgiveness for spoiling her evening and driving her to the point of apoplexy, for losing the society a great soprano and wasting police time, even if it was just a phone call. In mitigation, I would say that everyone else who was in on the joke thought it was hilarious and had a great time watching her run herself ragged answering the door. So it's Al. What we've discovered doing that is that just the doorbell makes Rebecca come over all funny. Never mind James Martin.
It is funny.
That's all you need. He had it wired up. You pressed his thing, and then off it went.
Oh, yes.
Sister
There's something
Rebecca.
about that sound. I don't know what it is. I think it really depends on how annoying this Hyacinth Bucket character was.
I think she was intensely... She was clearly just running the show.
Yeah, I think she was intensely annoying, and I think that sound is hilarious. So the more that Al made people hear that sound, the better, I think. And I think the gag was great, and you are totally forgiven, Al.
We haven't had opera-based confessions before. I know this is only loosely because it comes from the Operatic Society, but I bet there are a whole bunch of operatic-based confessions, and we need to get to the bottom of them. Anyway, Mother Superior.
Well, you see, let me start out by saying I can't stand fancy dress parties. They drive me nuts. I can't see the point of them. Everyone looks ridiculous, and I just will not get involved. So I'm quite anti before we even start. However,
I'm kind of with you on that.
I think we're all with you.
That was one of the funniest sound effects we've ever had.
Well, we haven't had many.
Hey, we're off again.
I don't know why it's so funny, but it kind of is. And I think if I'd have been there, which I wouldn't have been because I don't like fancy dress parties, if I'd have been there, I would have been curled over with laughter watching this awful woman running around. So from entertainment value alone, I would like to forgive you.
Text from Tracy. Please stop ringing the doorbell. It's driving the dog mad. So sorry, Tracy's dog. There you go. It's someone else. Chase them away, Brother Matthew.
What's she doing answering the door? I mean, it's up to her whether she answers the door or not. And if she's taken upon herself to answer the door every time the doorbell goes, because she's so important, then frankly, she had it coming to her. And obviously are going to be forgiven. If for nothing else than that sound. Which does sound very 70s sitcom, doesn't it? Yes. Hello? Oh, it's the vicar, and there are my pants around my ankles. Who's that in the wardrobe?
I think... there's the Confessions sort of dramatic society now should get together, and if you want to suggest any kind of sound effects, it's almost not enough just to have a great story. At the end, just add some sound effects, that maybe we could rustle up. We had the voice of Tony Blackburn earlier in the week. Oh. How about that? So did you forgive in the end?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
All right. Al, thank you very much. These confessions@bbc.co.uk if you want to email, or you can go via the website bbc.co.uk/radio2. Look for the drive time pages, confess from there, and add any dramatic instructions.
Please, exit stage left.
Yes, that would seem appropriate. During tonight's tale, which comes, it's kind of anonymous, but it's signed the letter A, so it could be frankly anything, really. Father Simon the Collective, I have now lived with my guilt for 3 years and feel the time is due to unburden myself of this misdemeanour. Take comfort from the soothing words and advice of the sisters and brothers of your collective. I am the managing director of an advertising agency, and my crime was committed while on one of my many corporate hospitality trips. Oh, corporate hospitality.
Oh, yeah,
this is going to be good.
A few confessions coming from that and the advertising agency. All right. I was with my creative director, who for this purpose we shall call Dan. We were in South Wales 3 years ago, Simon. It was a cold, windswept, wet Monday in the January of 2009. We finished our meeting at 4:30, and the clients and I suggested that we retire to a local hostelry for some suitable refreshment before our evening meal. So for the next 2 hours we entertained and drank heartily until only the three of us were left. Dan, my creative director, Bethan, a junior in the marketing team from the clients, and myself. There was a quench still to be relieved, however, so the three of us agreed to move on to another bar for just one more drink before our evening meal, which is exactly what Matt said at the Folk Awards, and I think just before he went to bed at 5.
Yeah.
Well, how shocked were we to discover on entering a popular weekend-themed bar down an alleyway to find ourselves among 250 other revellers. Ordering our drinks, we ascertained from one of the crowd that it was the belated Christmas party for the staff from the whole of South Wales region who work at a famous burger takeaway restaurant. Just making alterations as we go through. Excitedly, the loose-tongued employee also told us that normally they received a surprise visit from the head office of said burger maker. We also ascertained that it was normally this one person, who we should name Mr. Jones, who made the trip, but he couldn't make it that particular night, and indeed had sent someone else who they didn't know from HQ. Well, a small glance from Dean over to me, and we knew that a jape was forming in my head, and within 5 minutes, Beth from our clients had introduced herself to the DJ as the PA to the Assistant Director of Marketing for the burger people in question. Yes, Mr. Ridges from HQ had made it all the way from London to congratulate the staff and indeed wanted to make a small speech. So Mr. Ridges, while I was still in my suit and collar and looked very smart, made his, or rather my, way to the middle of the dance floor, taking the handheld microphone, promptly made a 5-minute speech. The staff applauded as I congratulated them on beating hamburger sovereigns, Kidderminster fried chicken, and the region's own Kebab-tastic. We beat them hands down in 2008, and a little ripple of applause went round the dance floor. Yes, well done for being the leading supplier of fast food in the whole of South Wales. Staff illnesses down to 2%. Councils complaining of continually having to repair only our roads leading to our drive-thrus, and our litter was the most recycled by at least 5 tonnes over the rivals. Another round of applause. This is a pretty good impromptu speech, you have to say. With a final flourish and realising that I was actually slightly stumbling with my words, I made a theatrical look at my watch and said, "It's now 9:15, a free bar until 9 o'clock. Well, the sight of young personnel hurdling sofas, tables, and rushing past to order their tequila sunrise, salty dog, and slippery nipple gave me a warm sense of achievement, and I smiled in that fatherly manner until a hand clasped me on the shoulder. I turned round, whereupon this youngish man introduced himself as the sales manager for the region. He said, "I blooming well love the company. I love the job, and I love you." Good lad, I said, and I gently manoeuvred him to the bar to glean his free drink. Then an ice maiden approached. A rather small but businesslike lady came over and introduced herself as the regional director, and then fired at me the following questions. "I don't know you. What department are you in? Have you got any business cards? And which hotel are you staying in?" At this point, and with a bead of sweat running down the back of my neck, Dan, my creative director, stepped in and said in his best Parker the chauffeur voice, "Mr. Ridges, it really is..."
Dear.
Well, it's Parker.
It's Thunderbird.
It's Parker
Have
from
you put that
Thunderbirds.
in to say
No.
just so that you can do that voice?
I can't do it now. "Mr. Ridges, it really is time we left. You have an early flight back to London tomorrow, Millet." No, not Millet. Gathering my thoughts, I asked which hotel the lady was staying at. Surprisingly, it was the same one as we were staying at. I suggested a quick meeting at 7 a.m. sharp over a cup of coffee. Told her to put all these free drinks on her regional budget, and the three of us walked out calmly until around the corner when we scarpered, sprinting for the security of a hidden booth in one of their competitors. To this day, Father Sam, I am unaware who paid for those cocktails and the free drinks, so I think I better throw myself at the mercy of your fine collective on these counts. To the burger sellers for spending their entire regional budget, to their employees if they were made to pay the bar bill, which would have been extensive, and to the owners of that bar if they had to stump up for the free drinks. Oh yes, and to the senior employees of said burger retailers who I lied to. It was a kind of a good speech. Well, in his memory it's a good speech. However, someone somewhere had to pay the bill. You can imagine free drinks, and if it was cocktails, that would have been some bar bill. What say you, Sister Rebecca?
As you kind of implied, it's incredibly bold of him to hijack the event.
I think he had some Dutch courage there.
I think he probably did, yes. I mean, it's a bit dangerous to say there was a free bar. It could have caused a riot, you know. But I think, on reflection, you know, it's always nice to have 15 minutes of free bar at one of these events. So it should have happened anyway. And, you know... Yes. I think that he did a good to all these people at this event, and the company probably had to pay, but they could probably afford it. So I think
well, that's all right then.
You are forgiven.
Thank you very much indeed, Mother Superior.
May I just reconfirm the year that this happened?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So were we in a recession? Were people struggling 3 years ago?
2009, because the financial crash started 2008, didn't it? Yes, the times were hard.
Times
Not
were
quite
hard.
as hard as they are now.
No, but I'm just thinking, I'm trying to put this into perspective, that, it's all very well ripping off a large multinational company, but in these hard times, if you do it at the wrong moment,
This
then
is
it can
the
have...
Dick Turpin School of Economics.
Exactly.
If you're hard up, you can nick stuff.
Boy, was he bold to do what he did. I mean, he's a man who's got my attention, I have to say, to be able to do that and have a whole night of free drinks. I'm quite impressed, actually, at a certain level. And as long as nobody kind of lost their jobs as a result of the money that was spent and all that, I would say... good for you. Sorry I didn't think of it. You're forgiven.
Now, Brother Matthew, who never turns down a free drink.
Well, no, and you've got to give certain kudos to this guy for coming up with the idea in the first place, and for his mate getting him out of the shtick as well by saying, we've got to get back to the hotel. I've got to say, if I were in his position and I'd managed to convince everyone that I was the regional director or whatever, I was thinking, what would I say? And it would be either, oh, by the way, you're all sacked, or it would be, oh, by the way, we're moving the branch to Thailand. So, frankly, you can all have a free bar. It's actually not a bad one to do. So I'm going to say definitely forgiven, because it was a good one.
I'm glad you're not our boss.
No.
If that's your instinct, the first thing you want to say is to sack people or move everyone to Thailand.
We're all off.
And that's your lot for now. Join us next week, of course, for more Confessions, weekdays from 5. And we'll have another Confessions podcast available next Friday. Thank you so much for listening.